So in this video, we're going to show you how to read in input. Okay. So from the file, text file. Now, before you want to do read in input, that's the basics introduction about, I would call prerequisite. Okay, about TryCatch exceptions handling here. Okay. So let me just walk you through this first. So what's TryCatch exception handling? Like for example, we know that in Java or any type of programming, we see there are three types of errors, right? And those are syntax. Right? Syntax can be fixed by compilers, going to tell you, right, if there's an error on syntax. If I create a new project, okay, and just try to introduce you to TryCatch demo. If there's an error on syntax, you should see it at the bottom, right, of your screen. Where if you use Eclipse, right, on console, like for example, like that. Also syntax also telling you here, right? I mean, yeah. So that's syntax, which can be fixed because compiler tell you. Like if I happen to use scanner and let's say file, I want to read from the file, new scanner. We talk about read in from the file, right? We need to do file instead of system.in, and this can be your file name, right? String file name, which is, let's say, test.txt. I'm going to talk about text file, right? So this new file pretty much is a class that's going to, yeah, create the object for the file name. Of course, you need to import this, right? Now, syntax means if you have an error right there, it's telling you, hey, you're missing the semicolon. That's one type of errors. Now, there's another type of errors, which is runtime error, right? Runtime error pretty much your logic errors that when I want to add 1 plus 1, it's supposed to return 2, but it happens to say 1. Something that's wrong, right? Which, that's very hard to taking care of unless you have to read through your code and see where it went wrong. Now, the third type of errors is we have the logic errors. And the third type of errors is what? When you loop forever, right? Something like when you loop forever is non-stop, right? So that's, what do you call that? So when you loop, that should be part of runtime errors, right? So let's revise again. We said syntax errors, right? And then logic errors, and then runtime errors. There are three types of errors, right? So logic errors, like I just said, when you add, you don't get the result correctly. Now for runtime, this is different. Like loop forever, or try to divide by 0, right? Or something that you cannot control, like Microsoft Windows. Sometimes you see that pop-up message. You want to send an error report, right? Do you want to debug your program, right? So that's those type of runtime errors. Why we cannot control? Because it depends on the user behaviors at that time that the user input something. So that's why it's very important to take care of your input validations, right? Like, for example, we try to divide two numbers, numerator and denominator. You know, denominator not supposed to be 0. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem, correct? Denominator, right? Not supposed to be 0. The bottom part, okay? Now, in that case, your program, how would you handle that? we know that we can make a simple if-else statement, right? So let's not worry about this part first. So if I say I want the user to input something, right? So let's just use scanner for the key. We try to read in something from the keyboard first. Okay. So a basic logic that we like to do if, right? Okay, so I'm going to do division, so this is called quotient as the answer. So I'm going to say double quotient. Now we're going to have int numerator and denominator, right? So the user is going to read in numerator, so we got a prompt. We can do GUI too, okay? But this is just for showing very quick. Enter numerator. We got to read in the numerator from keyboard dot next int. And then denominator equals to keyboard dot next int. So we gotta prompt the user to enter the denominator afterward. Alright, so now we have to take care of, like I said, denominator is the issue, right? If denominator equals to 0, so this is like user validations, right? You have to prompt again to enter denominator and read in again. But you may well say this time said denominator cannot be 0. To tell the user, right? Okay. So that's pretty much just basic if else, and then that's how you control that the program will not run into runtime errors. Runtime errors is if you try to divide by 0, that's another type of runtime errors. Then I can just do output without worry about user input. Now, in this case, it's easy to understand because we know it's not much about dividing numbers. But again, as I said, easier to understand means we can do if else to taking care of 0 case. But again, how would you know the user will enter something weird, maybe decimal numbers? Correct? Then you have to do taking care if else again, right? And user may enter something else even weird too, like string or characters. Any other data type, that will crash your program for sure. And this is called runtime errors. That means you have to do what? Always have to do another if else. So you see the problem at this point. You will never know what the user is going to give you until you really experience the problem, just like Windows. When you use Microsoft Windows, they say, do you want to send a report? Do you want to send a report? That is the problem because maybe you happen to hit in some button that or something that application cannot handle. Make sense? So what's the better way then? Because if else I cannot really create 10 scenarios to handle all the inputs because we don't know what people is going to give you. They may give something else. In this case, it handle it. That works correct. Like I said, okay, I thought my program works perfect. I taking care of that, but this time the user happened to do something weird like that. Well, that's a problem. Now we see that we cannot handle the user input behaviors. User can come up with anything that we cannot imagine. So that means your program crashed, and then user said, "What happens? I don't know. What is this statement?" Or they're not going to see this statement when they run the application, but they're going to see that program just hang, just like you do Windows and it's freeze, froze, or something, right? So they don't want that. So because it was freezing or froze because it cannot do anything else, it's just run into that exceptions. Right there, it's say exceptions. Alright, so we say we're going to take care of that case by using TryCatch instead. Okay? So when you do if like this, your program is not going to run when you run into that strange input. It's pretty much stop your program. The benefit of TryCatch is not only it's going to take care of all the scenarios for you, but also taking care of not making program stop. Okay, it still run the program. Like user may just going to have the message up say, hey, something wrong with your input. That's it. Please check your input, and then user can click OK to continue. Okay, like it's not going to stop from doing what user tried to do. Now I'm going to look at try now before, because you need to handle your program will continuously read and input until it is correct. That's what we want to do. Okay. Now exceptions, there are many types. Okay. If you look at exception, can have class not found exceptions, input output exception, and this is the one that you have to take care when you read in the file and write the file, input the file. Why? When you read in the file, it may say the file is not existing. That's the time that you have to handle by using TryCatch. Or when you write to the file may not be existing, or the drive is not connecting properly, right? So a drive errors. This is runtime exception that we just look at, right? Arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, index outbound when you do arrays, right? You look at arguments and many more. Okay, and these are just errors. Variables, they all come from variable and objects classes. This is the hierarchies. Alright, so now let's look at how would you do TryCatch here. You try to do and catch if there's a problem. That's one way, or you can those. So let me show you try first. What I try to do, I'm going to take this part out for now. I try to divide numbers, right? I didn't have if to take care of that. And I'm going to catch. And when you catch, you just do exception as the arguments. E. Okay. So I'm going to let me put the code that I took out, comment it here in case I would need it. And this one, when you try, there's no problem, it's just output a quotient. Catch means if there are problems, system.out.errors, ERR, check input. Okay, check denominator or check input. I think input is better because it's going to handle off numerator and denominators, because user can enter something wrong on that point too. Let me see what happens. Let me just do print first. Okay. Alright, so now let's test this program. Enter numerators 5, enter numerators 0, check input. See that? You don't see exception anymore. And it's going to handle all the scenarios, like if I enter something with it didn't handle that. We're going to catch the input mismatch exception too. that is another way to handle it.